think we are on.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Hello. I do not see us. Let me see.
I see the red square.
Yeah, it just went live.
Okay.
Welcome to Wisdom Wednesday.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. I want to start today by asking you something. You don't have to answer out loud, just a question. What's the thought that keeps coming back to you? The one that shows up uninvited, the one that sounds like it knows you. Maybe it says you're too far gone. Maybe it says you'll never change. Maybe it says you're not worth the effort, or that people around you would be better off, or that no matter how hard you try, you'll end up right back where you started. Most of us have a thought like that. And most of us have never been told what to do with those thoughts, except maybe to try harder or not think about it or pray about it. So today we're going to talk about the mind, not in a clinical detached way, but in a way it actually matters for recovery, for faith, and for getting through regular Tuesday afternoons when nobody's watching and the old thinking starts creeping back in. Our scripture today is Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Renewing your mind. We say it a lot, but what does it actually look like? Today we're going to find out. We'll talk about how thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are connected and how that loop can work for or against you. We'll name some of the most common thought distortions that show up in recovery. We'll talk through what it means to pause and replace a thought. We'll land on how all of this connects to something much older and deeper than any technique or spiritual discipline. Let's get into it.
So, here I am. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the thought/feeling-behavior loop. So, I said that word. I'm going to have to put a penny in the soda jar. Here's something that sounds simple but changes everything once you really internalize it. Your thoughts create your feelings. Your feelings drive your behaviors, and your behaviors tend to confirm your original thoughts. That's the loop, and it runs constantly. Usually below the level of conscious awareness, shaping how you experience every single day. Let's walk through it slowly. Say you wake up one morning and the first thought your brain produces is, I'm going to mess this up. I always do. That's a thought. It arrives fast, often before you've even had coffee, and it feels true, not because it is true, but because your brain has thought it so many times that it's worn a group. So the thought produces a feeling. Maybe it's a low, heavy dread. Maybe it's kind of restless anxiety. Maybe it's a flat numbness that makes getting out of bed feel pointless. The feeling lands in your body before you've had a chance to examine where it came from. And then the feeling shapes the behavior. So you move throughout the morning slower, you pull back from people a little, you cancel the thing that you were going to do. I do that quite often. You reach for whatever has historically made the heaviness smaller. And the craving isn't about wanting anymore. It's about relief from a feeling that started with a thought that you never even questioned. And then, here's the cruel part, the behavior confirms the thought. So you pulled back, you didn't connect, you canceled so you didn't show up, and your brain files that away as evidence. It's like your brain is saying, see, I told you. Like you always mess everything up. So the loop closes, and then it runs again tomorrow. There is hope in all of this. If the loop starts with a thought, then interrupting the thought interrupts everything that comes after the thought. You cannot always control the first thought that arrives. Those are fast, automatic, and deeply grooved. But you can learn to intercept it before it becomes a feeling, before the feeling becomes a behavior, before the behavior becomes evidence against yourself. That is what Paul means by renewing your mind. It's not positive thinking, not pretending that hard thoughts don't exist, but learning slowly through practice and grace to catch the thought before it takes the wheel. The loop can be retrained. It takes time, it takes repetition, and it takes exactly the kind of daily intentional practice that recovery and spiritual discipline share.
I love that. I can relate to that so much. You know, I mean, I have often been told that I'm not a very positive Polly. Why are you thinking so negative? You know, why are you thinking about the worst? Well, because I'm used to the worst.
Yep.
You know, and so just changing those thought patterns, because it doesn't always end up where I believe that it's going to end up. And so for part 2 of this, it's talking about naming the distortions, thoughts that lie. So let's slow down on the thought side of that loop for a minute, because not all thoughts are created equal, and some of the most common ones in recovery are flat out distortions. They feel true, they sound true, they have the tone of truth, but they are not. I want to name a few of them, because one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is learn to recognize the distortion when it shows up. Not to shame yourself for having it, but to call it what it is. Joanne, will you post that picture in the comments for us? So we're going to post this picture in the comments. It is the common distortions, and then let's see.
Y'all get you a counselor. We learn this stuff in therapy.
Yes. Let's see. How do we might have to post it here in just a minute. Jessica, can you take a picture of that on your phone and upload it right here?
Got it.
Where's my phone?
I have no idea.
Is it in the?
We really can't get it together, y'all. Just saying.
We have been out pounding the pavement all day, so while we're getting our stuff together, we want to thank everybody that we talked to today. Crossville small businesses on Main Street are really showing up and showing out for RC, and we very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so, yes, we did learn this in counseling. My lady is pretty rock solid. She's awesome. And she gave this paper to me. I have a real bad, I guess you'd call it a pathway of the catastrophizing. And so we'll get to that one here in just a second. But you guys can see this. And so it'll have the common cognitive distortions, but then it also has the alternate way of thinking. And so it's not just pointing out what you're doing, but it's giving you a way to navigate to a healthier way of doing those things. And so the first one is all or nothing thinking. This is the thought that says, if I'm not doing it perfectly, I'm doing it wrong. If I had one bad day, the whole week is ruined. If I relapsed, I'm back at 0 and everything I built means nothing. Recovery isn't that perfect. Recovery that isn't perfect isn't real recovery. That thought is a lie. Progress that includes setbacks is still progress. A candle that flickered is still a candle. The second one is catastrophizing. And so these are in a little bit different of an order than they will be in the comments, because this is a printout that we have. And so, let's see. Catastrophizing, which is future tripping's close cousin. It's the thought that takes one difficult thing and extrapolates it. Oh, I don't know if I said that word right. Extrapolates. It's a big word.
I don't know what it means, but
it all the way to the worst. So I guess it just multiplies it all the way to the worst possible outcome. I had a craving today, which means I'll relapse, which means I'll lose everything, which means I'll never get it back. The brain skips from step 1 to step 10 and presents the disaster as inevitable. It isn't. Step 1 is just step 1. The third is mind reading. The assumption that you already know what people think of you and that what they think is bad. They didn't text back because they're done with me. She looked at me that way because she knows I'll fail. He didn't say anything because there's nothing good left to say. Recovery makes us hypervigilant to rejection, and that hypervigilance becomes its own distortion. You cannot read minds, and the story your brain writes about what others think is almost always far darker than the truth. The fourth, and maybe the most familiar, is the shame label. This is when you stop evaluating a behavior and start indicting a person. Not, I did something harmful, but I am harmful. Just like we talked about last week. You know, like, instead of saying, you know, that sin is bad, we oftentimes tell ourselves that we are bad. And so, you know, we have to really be mindful because we're not bad. The things that our addiction takes us to is bad. The things that our flesh takes us to are bad. That doesn't mean that we're bad people. We just have not made amazing choices most of the time. Not I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. The shame label takes one moment and makes it an identity. This is the one that keeps people from asking for help. Because if the problem is what I did, there might be a way forward. But if the problem is what I am, why bother? You are not your worst moment. You are not the sum of your failures. Slowly, with a lot of repetition to separate what you've done from who you are, these distortions are not signs of weakness. They are learned patterns. They were often survival strategies at some point, ways your mind kept you protected when protection felt necessary. But they don't serve you anymore, and you can learn to recognize them before they run the loop. I think you picked up my papers. Because I've lost them.
There they are.
There you go.
All right.
I'm like, you took mine.
So I posted the picture of the cognitive distortions. I had to do a separate post for that. It would not let me post a picture
Gotcha.
for some reason. In the
Okay.
comments.
It might be where it's not live on your phone or something.
All right. So now we come to the pause and replace. So we know about the loop. It actually says so. I did just throw that one in there. So we know about the loop and we can recognize the distortions. Now what? Here's where it gets practical. I want to teach you a two-part move that is deceptively simple and genuinely hard. It's called the pause and replace. The pause comes first, and it is the whole game. Distorted thoughts are fast, they feel automatic, and they arrive with authority. And the default response is to either believe them immediately or fight them, which usually just makes them louder. The pause is the third option. It's the moment where you notice the thought without immediately accepting it or attacking it. You create just a small gap between the thought arriving and you responding to it. In practice, this might look like a single breath. It might look like physically placing your feet flat on the floor and feeling the ground under them. It might look like saying quietly to yourself, I notice I'm having the thought that blah, blah, blah. Naming a thought out loud or even just consciously takes it out of automatic and brings it into view. That pause, even a 3-second one, is where everything changes because in that gap, you have a choice. Not a perfect, fully rational choice, but still a choice. Then comes the replace. And I want you to be careful here because this is not about forcing positivity. It is not about telling yourself that everything is fine when it isn't. Toxic positivity is its own distortion and your mind will reject it immediately because your mind knows better. The replace is about moving from a thought that is distorted to a thought that is honest. Not a better feeling lie, but a truer truth. So when the thought says, I'm a failure, the replacement is not, I'm amazing and everything is great. The replacement might be, I made a decision that I regret. That is not the same thing as being a failure. I am someone who is learning. So when the thought says nobody actually cares, the replace is not, everyone loves me. The replace might be, I don't have evidence of that. There are people who have shown up for me and I can reach out to one of them today. When the thought says, this is never going to get better, the replace is not, everything is going to be great. The replace might be, I don't know what next year looks like, but today is not the same as it was a year ago, and that's something. The replace is honest, it is grounded, and it does not require you to pretend. It just asks you to be as fair to yourself as you would be to someone you love. And here's what Paul knew, and what neuroscience has since confirmed. The more you practice this, the more it becomes the new default. The groove changes. It doesn't change overnight. It doesn't change without setbacks. But real, measurable, lasting change happens in the mind when you practice thinking differently over time. That is renewal. That is transformation, and that is what Romans 12:2 is pointing toward. I'm so messed. Okay.
I was thinking. All right, folks. Part 4: renewal as a spiritual discipline, not a one-time event. I want to close with something that I think is really important today. Renewing your mind is not a moment. It is not a prayer you pray once and then your thought life changes forever. It is not a breakthrough at a retreat or a verse you memorize or a session with a counselor where something clicks. Excuse me. It is a discipline, daily, repeated, imperfect, but ongoing. Paul uses the word transformed in Romans 12:2. In Greek, it's metamorpho.
I like that word.
That's a word.
The same, it probably sounds even better because I said it like that.
Metamorpho.
The same word we get metamorphosis from, and a metamorphosis is not an event. It is a process. It happens gradually inside a structure that looks closed off around the outside, and then one day something emerges that couldn't have been imagined from where it started. That is the arc of recovery. That is the arc of renewal. The spiritual disciplines, prayer, scripture, community, service, stillness, are not add-ons to recovery. They are the container inside which renewal happens. They are how you keep returning to the truth when the distortions come back. And they will come back. The practice is not about eliminating the distorted thoughts forever. It's about shortening the time between when the thought arrives and when you recognize it for what it is. Prayer is where you say out loud or just in your chest, this is what my mind is telling me. I don't want to believe it. Help me see more clearly. Community is where someone else holds the truth for you when you've lost your grip on it yourself. It is the person who says that thought is lying to you and means it in a way that somehow gets through. Scripture is not a collection of corrective instructions. It is the slow, sustained rerouting of how you understand yourself, the world, and what is true. Read it not to extract information, but to let it sit with you. Let it argue quietly with the distortions over time. Stillness, even 5 minutes of it, is where you practice the pause before the hard moment arrives, where you learn what it feels like to let a thought pass without chasing it. These are not things that weak people need and strong people don't. They are what transformation is actually made of. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The pattern of this world, hey Bubba, the pattern of this world says your past defines you. The pattern of this world says shame is the appropriate response to failure. The pattern of this world says you have to have it together before you deserve help. Renewal says something different. It says you are not stuck. It says the mind that has been shaped by pain and survival and all the things you learned too young can be reshaped. Not erased, but renewed. Slowly, faithfully. One thought, one pause, one honest replacement at a time. You don't have to be who your worst thoughts say you are. That is the invitation, and it is open to you today.
Nice. Before you go, I want to leave you with something practical. One thing to try this week. When a hard thought shows up, and one will, try this. Say to yourself just quietly, I notice I'm having the thought again, and then name it. Don't fight it, don't agree with it, just name it. Then take a breath and ask, is this thought distorted? Is this thought the whole truth? What would I say to someone I love if they told me this is what they were thinking? And then gently offer yourself a truer thought instead. Not a perfect one, just a truer one. That's the practice, that's the discipline. That's what renewal looks like on a regular Wednesday when nothing feels spiritual and the old thinking is loud. You're being remade. Even now, even when you can't feel it. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is happening. You just have to keep showing up for it. Take good care of yourself this week. Reach out to someone if you need to, and we'll be back next Wednesday.
Dun, dun, dun. As usual, if you need prayer, drop a heart in the comments, and we will pray for you. We really appreciate you guys watching our little weekly shindig. I think we should give Okie a cameo because he came in.
Hello.
We're gonna bring Oakley out. Okie, come here. We talk about him all the time, so
We have to introduce you
What's
to
the
the
cord?
folks.
right here.
Hello.
He's our spiritual giant.
Yes, he is the great oak tree. All right, thanks you guys for joining.